Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Black Rims. I'm Mars Girl.
And I'm Josh Knight the First.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 7.
Or Episode 29 if you're counting.
You know, you weren't counting for the last couple of episodes.
I was totally counting.
You were not.
You go back and listen.
You want to go back and listen?
I'm the only one that goes back and listens.
I don't like to hear my own voice.
Well, a lot of other people do.
You people are sick. You know that? You're real sick. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just want to throw that. But you're sick. What's going on, Josh?
What's going on? Stuff.
What'd you do?
This week?
Since last time I asked you what you did.
This week, I actually had, it's not much of a story, but I will say that I've achieved a life goal.
Really? Was that a life goal that I was there for?
You sure were. This past weekend there was a convention down in Laredo, Texas, where I had the privilege of meeting and getting my picture taken with David Yost, who most people would remember as Billy from the original run of Power Rangers. Without getting too nostalgic about it, Billy was my hero growing up. You know, he was somebody I looked up to, somebody who could be intelligent, but at the same time be nerdy, and yet still be the hero, or one of the heroes. And, you know, throughout all those years, he was always my favorite character, to this day, still my favorite character, and it was, quite honestly, an honor to meet him.
For me, it was simply, he was my favorite Power Ranger, and that's, like, about as far as it went. Like, you, on the other hand, it was like, if you were to be represented as a Tupperware container, it was like that Tupperware container was put in the microwave and it was spinning around, and you know, plastic stuff's not supposed to be in the microwave, so the lid kind of starts to pop off a little bit, and like the food in there that's heating up is starting to kind of boil out a little bit, and like that was you. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't the lid
You're trying to
popping.
explain how I got around him.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
It wasn't the lid popping off of this Tupperware container. It was like, it popped open and, like, the spaghetti sauce is starting to leak out the side.
It was hard, honestly, because, you know, I did my best to keep my cool because, you know, I've been very, very much one of those fans before about certain things where I couldn't contain myself, and I think I was better about it, but it was just, honestly, the hype of the situation. It was very hard to keep my composure.
You weren't at all bad. Like, the only thing, and I said this to you before, the only thing was, like, if you were gonna get your picture taken with him, you weren't 100% ready and didn't have the stuff you needed for signatures and stuff already pulled out of the bag.
Admittedly, that was a problem, but he still let me morph alongside him, and that's something 8-year-old me would have never believed would have happened in his lifetime.
You know what? Maybe I'll use that somewhere in our background of our logo this week. Just throw that picture somewhere back there.
Yeah, sure, why not?
You know, one thing I didn't mention at the very top of this episode was that starting from this week forward, we're actually further associating Beyond the Black Rims with the event that we're coordinating down here in
Southwest Animation and Gaming Expo, or SWAG Expo.
Taking place in January 2015 downtown.
Here in San Antonio.
Is going to be great. Yeah. And we just wanted to let you know that, you know, we are partnering and helping each other out from this point forward. So you're going to hear us bring that up quite a bit. I mean, sorry about that, but we are sort of...
Right.
We're sort of big names within the convention we're setting up anyway. Like, I'm the co-chair. Josh, you're working on cosplay-related junk.
Yes.
Like, this is all part of the same program.
Right.
Just wanted to bring that up.
So it's nice to know that this show finally has at least a sponsor.
You could say that, yeah.
Speaking of which, we should probably get to tonight's topics.
Exactly. For one thing, I think I just kind of wanted to go down the generic route for my own topic as far as Grand Theft Auto 5 is concerned. I mean, yeah, there's some news in regards to it, but most of it is just like everybody else talking about, oh, controversy or not controversy that they're trying to turn into controversy, that sort of thing.
I'm going to be talking about Fox announcing plans for a pre-Batman series before Batman shows up in Gotham, entitled Gotham, which will focus on the early days of Commissioner Gordon and his work on the Gotham police force.
And I guess I wasn't entirely sure what we were talking about before, but apparently it's in regards to Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes, they were number one this week, the premiere episode. We're going to be talking about how that's managed to do so well in the ratings this week, and how it's going to have to match up with all these other shows coming down through the pipeline very soon in the long run.
Sounds awesome. All right. Past that, before we get into those, we do want to talk about a couple follow-up stories, or at least one of them. In particular, we talked previously about how Kamen Rider Wizard was wrapping up, and they're going to move into Kamen Rider Gaim.
Yes, in another 2 weeks.
So, in that previous episode, whichever episode that was, I have to admit,
it was the episode where we were talking about Gaim. For those of you that haven't listened to it yet, Kalen pretty much figured out why exactly Gaim did not make his premiere in the summer movie for Wizard.
And why they're stalling with these current last 2 episodes of Wizard. Wizard is done, okay? Let's get that over with right now. But there are 2 other episodes of Wizard, one that aired this past week and one that will be airing this week, that feature Decade for some reason.
Well, to put it in context, this isn't the first time that a series has technically ended its story, but they still had an episode or 2 to go. Like, that's happened with Garo, that's happened with certain other series over the years. Most notably Garo, they had an extra episode where it was kind of set up like a theatrical production, but it really didn't have any bearing on the story. And as far as Wizard is concerned, their story wrapped up last episode with 51. With 52 and 53, these are pretty much superfluous episodes to kind of, I guess, yeah, make room and make time for Gaim to have his stuff and his story ready, and also give him an introduction to the world at large. The problem with these episodes is that it is so obvious that the theory you came up with more than likely is correct, because of how much, when you really look at it, you can see they really hastily put the story together, or lack thereof, and they don't care about continuity, about certain effects, about voices. Like, they really must have been in crunch time to put out this lower quality of show. Now, don't get me wrong, in the first couple of, like, in the first minute or so, there's this nice montage of all 14 writers.
Yep, they blew that one in the first 2 minutes. Like, they should have saved that for later, but nope, let's get the good part over with so that you can immediately turn the TV off.
And then after that, it's pretty much Wizard if Wizard was a 2-part follow-up episode in Decade's run.
I beg to differ. Like, I get it, like, yes, that's what it is, and yet they didn't even get that right. Because it's more like if... Oh, how was I phrasing it the other day? If Decade... If... I don't even know, because it's just plain a sloppy mess. It's not even that this is Decade's interpretation of Wizard's world. It's like, oh, here's just more of Decade's world, because Decade is a whole bunch of mishmash of all sorts of other stuff all going on in the same time, which is what was happening in Wizard's world in this episode, and then you also happen to throw Wizard in for some reason.
Right.
Like, basically what I'm saying is, what is this? It's like nothing. It's a mishmash of crap. Like, Wizard's world is Decade's world. It's not Decade's world for Wizard. It's Wizard's...
Well, it's not even a real world, so to speak. It's this world inside of a magic stone where people at a certain age become monsters.
Bull crap. Because, you know what? The only people we've seen are the people that matter in Wizard's show.
Right.
Okay? And for that reason, it's like, oh, that's convenient. We needed to use these actors for a couple more episodes, so, yeah, you guys are... How can we shoehorn this in? Oh, you guys are still people, but nobody else is people.
Yes, that's kind of the storytelling that we're seeing here. And then, on top of that, you know, kind of jumping ahead, you can see it in the preview for next week's episode. You know, Gaim will fight alongside everybody, and everybody will use their final forms, I'm guessing, because, you know, Decade still got the ability to do that with complete form. The problem I have, and this is a very... For me, it might be... For some people, it might be nitpicky. For me, it's a matter of continuity. It's... And you can clearly see it in the screen caps. There's this difference between final forms of writers and what I call super-duper final forms that they've been introducing over the past few years.
Uh-huh.
Like, you know, Kuga could only go up to Ultimate. Like, Ultimate was his final form, but then he got Rising Ultimate because of Decade. And then from that point on, there are these super-duper forms, like... Well, Den-O, too. Den-O had Liner form, but now he's got Super Climax form. You know, double... Cyclone Joker Extreme, Cyclone Joker Gold Extreme, and so on and so forth down the line. The problem that I see there is that they're mixing the two together. Mm-hmm. Like, you can see O's in Super Tatoba form, but you see Den-O in Liner form posing as though Momotaros was possessing him, but in Liner form, Ryotaro is the one in control.
Like, I think the part where you're concerned about mishmashing which ultimate or super ultimate form is there at the end, I think that's a little nitpicky. What I don't think is nitpicky is what you just said about continuity of, okay, who is actually in control of this body,
right,
and would they actually be posing that way,
right,
and you got it completely wrong.
Like, that's not to say that Ryotaro hasn't done the pose before. I mean, you know, there was evidence of that in the second Den-O movie, but even so, it's very iffy on how they're choosing to do this. At this point, these two episodes are nothing more than a glorified stage show for as much continuity or storytelling there is.
And, well, like I was saying before, it's painfully obvious that, like, they had no earthly idea what they were going to do when it came to Gaim, if they even knew they were going to call him Gaim, or knew what the next writer was even going to be, up until, like, a couple months ago at best.
Well, a month ago at best, I'd almost argue. But not to stay on this too long, admittedly, Gaim, the suit, it looks better in motion, but it still remains to be seen how that particular series plays out, and we'll still have to see in another 2 weeks when it premieres.
Mm-hmm. Either way, all I'm saying is it was painfully obvious from this episode just how much they were stalling, and... like, hopefully Gaim's not a mess, because they were stalling like nobody's business.
And I'll say one more thing. Really, Toei, you wouldn't notice... You were hoping people wouldn't notice that you were also reusing past villain costumes for this bad guy? Like, I caught that.
Well, it looks like they're going to be spamming the use of said costumes.
Which effectively, unfortunately, makes this villain... just by that virtue alone, better than Narutaki ever was in Decade, and that's sad.
Yeah, but your concern was also that this guy is, in fact, Narutaki.
Oh yeah, that's what I was worried about, too. If this guy ends up being Narutaki, I will eat my shoe.
Eat your shoe?
Like, I just can't. I won't.
You want to put some of that Japanese mayo on that shoe before you get started?
Look, people don't know how much that sucked, but no. Let's just get to your topic.
Like, the shoe's not bad enough. The mayo's the part
mayo's going to be worse, and
out.
I don't want the mayo.
Alright, that having been said, I do want to go ahead and start talking about Grand Theft Auto 5. Everybody's already been talking about it. You can skip ahead if you really want to, but, I've been playing Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah, you caved. You weren't sure that you wanted it, and then right about release, you were like, you know what? I gotta get it. And then we had to have this conversation about whether or not you should, and then eventually, we went out to our local Target, and you picked up that game, and you've been playing for the past week.
It's not bad gameplay. It's really not. I mean, I've been having fun. Now, granted, is it a violent game? Yeah, it's a violent game. But
I've seen less violent Russian traffic videos.
oh, okay, you know what? That's true. Like, Russian traffic videos are about the equivalent of what I do in Grand Theft Auto, especially because I can't drive.
Right.
I hit everything in sight, and that is not on purpose.
Well,
aside from the storyline, I do not go out of my way to hit people unless I really just can't help it, okay? I'm sorry.
Because it's the same thing. You're running around at breakneck speed, going down the wrong side of the road, and then sometimes when you hit somebody, they get out of their car and pick a fight with you and sometimes pull a gun on you.
Yeah, that looks exactly like all the Russian traffic videos we watch on a weekly basis.
Yes. And that's kind of the charm.
That having been said, it's amazing how quickly GTA 5 breached $1 billion in sales.
That I find that to be insane.
3 days, man. 3 friggin' days. When the previous game to reach that mark was, it was Call of Duty, shoot, which Call of Duty was it? Either way, that one took, 2 weeks before...
2 weeks.
It took 2 weeks before it reached $1 billion in sales, and so it just blew the previous record out of the water. I don't know how much in sales it's earned up to this point, but that's friggin' amazing. At the same time, it's more than just the money that is getting GTA 5 into the news. Of course, you got news anchors all over the place talking about, is it too violent? Is it not too violent? Is it causing people to go out and shoot each other?
Should I be buying this for my kid?
You know what? My question is, why are you asking that question? No, you should not be buying this for your kid. And, you can argue, I'm a parent and you can't tell me how to parent. I know what my child is like, blah, blah, blah. I'm sitting there going... Yeah, but do you know this game? You know your kid, but do you know this game? Let me put it this way. I think, now granted, I'm not a parent, but I can already predict what I would do as a parent. I would say, hold on. You want this game? Alright, I think you might be mature enough. Let me buy it and see it for myself.
You mean play the game before the kid does?
Yeah, and I swear that's totally not so that I can say I was playing GTA 5. It seriously is is this too violent for my kid? I will find out through my own set of eyes and not through other reports. I will personally be the judge of whether or not I put this in my child's hands. On top of that, yeah, age is a factor. Now, granted, 17 is the purchasing age. If a parent wants to give it to their kid after that, you know what, so be it. My parents got me Jurassic Park when I was a kid, and I wasn't 13 yet, and it was a PG-13 rated movie. And, they judged that I was okay enough to see dinosaurs eating people, I guess. And so, you just have to...
Really it comes down to the argument of, yeah, you could do it, you could buy it. That's not necessarily saying it's to be done.
Right, exactly. Kotaku was bringing up some woman named Wendy Williams, and you can attest to this, Josh. I was saying the other day, Wendy Williams, who the hell is that? And then we had to go on this long,
because we don't... I knew who she was, but we had to bring up her wiki.
For my sake, I had to, go and wiki this thing. And I say this thing as if she's not a person.
Well...
Well, her boobs aren't people, for one thing.
Her boobs aren't people.
Well, apparently she had some radio program for a while, and then she had a TV program for some reason. I don't know who gave her the authority to speak in public, but, she says, I have no regrets about buying GTA 5 for my son, and, but the reasons that she gave for it weren't because, I judged my son's level of maturity, and, he's 13, and she's like, well, at some point, this quote right here specifically, without me having to rewatch the video, there comes a time when kids look like freaks and weirdos when they don't have when they don't have, if they don't have to do, that was phrased really weirdly. If
Basically,
they don't have or do the participate in certain things. Wow, this person screwed up that quote. She's saying that the child is going to look like a freak of nature if he doesn't know what GTA 5 is. And so
or that they're not going to be, the cool kid, who's not playing the current video game that's hot right now.
And I'm just sitting there thinking, is that really your utmost concern for your child? Worried about whether or not the kid is cool? I mean, I understand, having been a person who was picked on or ignored or whatever, you worry about your kid. My mom worried about me. You worry about your kid and how well they're handling social interactions.
Right.
And you check on them and you get sad if their friends are mean to them or people who aren't their friends are mean to them. But really, is that... What I was always taught by my parents was, if they don't like the things that you do, then that's unfortunate for them, and you need to go find the people that will like you either way. I mean, that was just me. Maybe that's because I had good parents. I don't know.
Well, really what it comes down to here is, with this particular game, is it violent? Yes. Is it crass? Absolutely. Can it be, I should actually phrase it that way, can it be viewed as fun? Absolutely. Is it for everybody? No, it's not.
Even some adults, some adults cannot handle the content in said game. And, I get that. There is a torture scene that is very, very stomach-turning.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult to watch, even though it is just a video game and it's not real. And, I can only handle it in spurts myself. I can only play so much and then put it down. I suppose there is a small level of desensitization, but at the same time, if I actually saw crud like that going down, I'd be freaked the heck out. Which is also where other news stories come up, too, where, Fox and HLN will come in. Granted, these are not particularly fantastic news sources to be going to begin with. But, what I'm saying is these
sources basically are running their mouths about the same old argument that has been going on for years about how playing these games creates basically the people that you see shooting up schoolyards and shipyards. Well, and yeah, this argument's not going to go away.
No, it comes up over and over and over again. At the same time, too, they bring up people with mental disabilities.
Should people with mental disabilities be allowed access to these games?
Well, that causes, if they really want to bring up that question, are they then asking that everyone with a mental disability carry some mental disability card and be carded for said or should everyone carry, should their ID be labeled as has a mental disorder? Isn't that a little terrible?
It's a stretch as far as I'm concerned.
And then you have to go up to the game counter and they have to judge you oh, you have a mental disability. I can't sell this to you. Well, how's that gonna go over?
How does that really work in practice? You go up to the counter at GameStop, okay, can I see your ID? Okay, your ID checks out. Now tell me about your mother. That's ludicrous.
That is ludicrous. And on top of that, and I heard this argument made as well, there are people who also say, you know what? I know plenty of people with disabilities, mental disabilities, who are perfectly sweet individuals who would never in their life reenact the things that they saw in said video games. They play them because, just like anybody else, they're looking for some other kind of release, and then they go about a very normal sort of daily life, and they're not high enough functioning to do anybody any harm.
Well, because really, when you think about it, in any form of media, when it's, it's something that's to be emulated, well, not really to be emulated, but when it is emulated and then there are negative circumstances, that's not the norm, that is the exception. Kind of like what we were talking about with Heroes of Cosplay. What is shown there is not the norm, it is the exception. Like, and I know this is kind of a dated reference, when there was that kid who had his friends bury him underground in sand because he was emulating Gaara's attack in Naruto, he is not the norm, he is the exception, because every other kid there was smart enough to not try and bury their friends or themselves in sand and potentially get themselves killed.
Right, like, considering, again, the violence in any other type of media, and this is a conversation that's been had over and over again, and here I am bringing it up again, considering the violence that is in absolutely everything around us all the time, non-stop, the stuff that flies on TV anymore is just amazing. That, like, I can't even believe we live in a day and age where that's even a thing.
It's kind of the thing that we're watching with, if not even just video games, on TV right now with Sons of Anarchy, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones. We see the violence and the sex and all of the things, you know, like we said earlier, Russian traffic videos, anybody can watch them on YouTube. And we're pretty much acting that out playing GTA 5.
But that's the thing, like, you don't have to actively play a video game in order to see these things around you. And if somebody had this premeditated idea that they were gonna go and do some harm to somebody, that's probably not due to video games, that's probably due to the fact that they were already messed up to begin with. And that's not just with a mental disorder, that's like this person very specifically had a very certain kind of problem.
Right.
A very violent sort of problem that already existed.
Right.
So you can't hardly blame it on one particular media. If you're going to blame it on one kind of media, you have to blame all media.
Right. And some people try to do that, but I see that most times when that happens, you can see the people backpedaling to keep it focused on video games because focusing on other types of media is too rational.
Well, other types of media have been around far longer than this sort of video game has been in the grand scheme of things. We're talking about, you know, video games really being a thing starting from the 1970s on up, and even then you didn't start getting people complaining about violence in video games for the most part until the 80s, which at that point was really kind of ludicrous, but because nothing looked real. That having been said, yeah, this is a news story and a topic that's been driven into the ground, and I know that I'm just repeating things that have been said before, but it begs to be repeated. If nobody stands up and says, hey, your ideas are ludicrous and your parenting is bad, then, you know, video games are going to get walked all over and there's going to be restrictions to what an adult can say and do with their media and with their time. You know, perfectly normal, rational human beings. We don't want to become Australia. I mean...
Who does?
I mean, not that there's anything wrong with Australia, it's
If we have any fans in Australia, we're sorry.
No, well, more like, I'm sorry that your video game rating system is a load of crap, because because they can't get GTA over there. They just can't. And anything they get over there has to be censored beyond recognition. Way worse than anything we complain about over here. We have it easy in comparison to Australia, quite frankly. I think that's about all I really wanted to say about it. Again, I know I'm just saying something that everybody's already heard, but feel free to join in the comments if you really want.
Okay, so moving on to the second story, I was surprised to read about this. It's coming across most news outlets that Fox has plans to work on this new series called Gotham, which will follow the adventures of Commissioner Gordon, James Gordon, in his early years on the force there in Gotham City. Now, this is kind of an interesting story to hear about, considering that we've already got plans, like we've said before, with DC coming out with a Batman vs. Superman movie. At least that's the working title currently. where more than likely they will have to cast a Commissioner Gordon for that movie. And this
they have to... Well, yeah, they would.
Yeah, because, you kind of have to have those interactions. And the thing about it is, there's a lot of this going on, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit more with the third story later, but right now we're going to focus solely on this proposal for Gotham, this young James Gordon on the force. It's interesting that they're doing these things where they're talking about having a series that has no roots in the current or even past cinematic universe. In other words, this will be a completely original take on the character.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that there haven't been stories before dealing with a young James Gordon. Of course, we've had his appearance in Batman Year One and subsequent titles related to that. Him having previously been on the force in Chicago and then moving back to Gotham, and stories before that saying he had been sent to Chicago from Gotham from one of the corrupt police commissioners there in Gotham ahead of time. But really, the interesting thing about this series that they're talking about planning is that it's going to be very similar to Smallville, in that Smallville never actually showed Superman. This show will never actually show Batman.
No tights, no Batman.
Well, technically, you could say no tights, no flights, because he's got the glider cape and the Batwing, and
Batman doesn't fly. I'm sorry. No.
No, he can fly.
No.
He had prep time.
No.
If he has prep time, he can fly.
He doesn't have flight superpower. No.
He has money for flight.
That's not a superpower.
It can be argued one way or the other whether or not money is a superpower.
Money is power. Money is not a superpower.
You can have super amounts of money.
That doesn't make it a superpower.
Anyway, point being, it'll be interesting to see, how they get this show off the ground, because, Commissioner Gordon, really, I would argue, up until very recently with the Christopher Nolan movies, hadn't been really given the respect and the love due the character.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had, several Commissioner Gordons over the years. We had the animated series. Before that, we had Neil Hamilton playing him on the 66 live-action Batman series. And there, he was kind of a joke, you've got the red glowing bat phone, and, oh, Cape Crusaders, you're here, great. And then, of course, you had Pat Hingle in the, really in all the, from 89 to 97, playing Commissioner Gordon in those movies, and he really didn't do anything. He was just kind of there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the Nolan movies that, well, one, we had a Commissioner Gordon that looked like the comic book.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for getting that right. And two, he actually stood for something, did something. You saw him come up from being, lieutenant, detective, all the way up to commissioner.
So there is some story to be told with this series.
Now, kind of what I was saying before with The Dark Knight Legacy, a bunch of story not being able to get told unless, you have a series or something like that. There's a lot of story that people don't know about, James Gordon that is there to be told. Now, the interesting thing about it, and I'm wondering how they're going to handle this, is that they say that they will throw in Batman villains throughout the series, but how is that going to work when there's...
what? Are they pre-villain? Is it building up to them becoming the villains that you know and love to hate? Because they can't start out as, oh, we've got the Joker coming around and being a dick.
Kind of similarly, and I didn't cover this last week, if you take that as his origin, before he was the Joker, he was a man known as the Red Hood, who was framed for a robbery by some thieves and fell into a vat of acid.
Right.
Not acid, it's a chemical of some sort, and became the Joker. We could feasibly see the original, or one of the original Red Hoods running around, and Gordon has to figure out who he is.
Right.
We could also potentially have, say, Edward Nygma, leaving clues around town, but not actually wearing a hat with a question mark on it.
Mm-hmm.
We could have stuff similar to that. Or even, lesser villains like, say, Zaz, who's just a knife killer, or even Mad Hatter. You could get away with, a few lesser villains without having to get into your Clayfaces, your Poison Ivies, your Two-Faces, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing I was going to get to is a lot of his story, again, happens after he's met Batman. Things like, the crippling of his daughter, the loss of his wife, various things that happened to him throughout the Force. So, I get it. there's a little bit of room to take liberties with who he is. But at the core, he needs to be, I would think, very similar to how he was depicted in the Nolan movies.
Right.
You know, straightforward. He's got to have this, not so much sageness about him, but he needs to have been through some crap.
Of course, yeah, but we need to watch him go through said crap.
Right.
In order to build up to the character that we really grew to discover in the Nolan movies.
Right. And we need to see him still have that sense, that very, that moral compass about him. Mm-hmm. That no matter how gritty things get, he's still focused on being the good guy, wanting to represent the good in Gotham, which is a lot of what they showed throughout the Nolan movies. Now, along those lines, we're, of course, going to have to see who they cast for Commissioner Gordon, or, you know, Detective Gordon, as he'll be here. And that's not going to be an easy set of shoes to fill, or easy pair of glasses to wear, as it were. Because, you know, this is a young Gordon. If it was up to me...
An easy badge to carry.
Yes, an easy badge to carry. If it was up to me, and if we were doing, like, regular continuity Commissioner Gordon, since he's just coming off Breaking Bad, and he did an excellent job in the Batman Year One animated movie, I would automatically say Bryan Cranston should play Commissioner Gordon.
So they have not cast
No, this is just in the planning stages right now. Now, as for a young Commissioner Gordon, it's kind of hard to see, like, how young is he going to be? Is he going to be, like, hopefully not in his mid-20s? Like, really, even then, Gary Oldman was about as young as you got. Because, you know, you saw a younger him tending to Bruce Wayne when he's just had his parents killed in front of him. And then even then, you know, still being a lieutenant on the force, he's still kind of younger than they played him in the last couple of things.
Right. So, then how young would you want to go? Because, like, he's got to move his way up somehow, and depending on how long they're planning on this to run, I mean...
Well, if you're thinking, like, 6 seasons worth, up until when he meets Batman, at the least, I guess, maybe late 20s. For as young as he should be.
Okay.
Now, as to who should play him for this, your guess is as good as mine. It's just got to be somebody who carries that gravitas with him. Somebody who we can get behind, somebody who we can believe in, somebody who we care about, you know, watching this stuff happen, want to see him take on the corruption of the Gotham City Police Department. Somebody who we can rationalize, you know what, when it gets to that point, I can see why he would get behind a guy in a cape and mask with pointy ears. And there's got to be something to it. And of course that goes into the writing as well. Whoever writes this, and they haven't announced that yet either, whoever writes this, I hope they've done their homework.
Well, I would imagine they would have to if they're going to be... Well, I guess they don't really have to. I mean, there's been plenty of TV series where they obviously haven't done their homework, and then they were just like, let's make a TV series about a guy.
And hopefully, you know, that won't be the case. You know, there are enough fan people out there that respect, mind you, this fictional character enough that, you know, you'll get your angry letters and Tumblr rants if they get it wrong.
Right, but the problem is that the vocal minority are just that, a minority, and I don't think the majority of America necessarily knows or cares about the source material. They're just going to watch it anyway, just like Bayformers puts butts into seats no matter how bad their movies are.
Right, it's not so much a matter of, you know, whether or not they were accurate to any of the comics or the original cartoon. It's that people have a vague idea of, oh, I know Optimus Prime, I know a Bumblebee, I know a Megatron, I'm gonna watch it.
Not even that. It's CG fighting robots from space. And that's all they need to know, and then they go in there and they're like, yeah, there's punching, and there's this visceral sort of ripping out of intestines, but they're not really intestines because they're robots, and, you know, it sells, it makes money. So, like, they could go in a direction that's like, what are you doing? Stop! but people might watch it because it's well produced, and then it'll make money anyway.
And see, the thing that worries me, of course, is that this is going to be on Fox.
Is it going to be on
Yes,
Fox? Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, because everybody knows, and I don't think this is any sort of secret, we all know if it ends up on Friday night, we're not going to see very much of this thing. That's just a given. Let's just pray that they get good writers, a good cast, and that it does not end up anywhere near Friday night if it's good.
Uh-huh.
If it's not so great, like, say, Terra Nova or Terminator, the Sarah Connor years were, then yeah, let it go. But if it's like, you know, we could, if only we were so lucky, if it is Firefly levels of good, please don't put it on Friday night, because everybody knows that's a death sentence.
Uh-huh.
And, yeah, I mean, it would be nice, you know, over the course of the series to see, you know, a couple of people show up here and there. Like, if we see, you know, Alfred show up, or, heck, even, you know, people from other comic properties, like, say, Clark Kent comes by.
Other
or
DC
heroes or names
who are
showing
not
up.
yet heroes.
Right.
Other
Yeah.
Justice League members, perhaps, that just sort of stumble on through.
Or, like, just randomly, because I think he's the one you could probably get away with, have Martian Manhunter show up, but he's in disguise.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, he helps Gordon
Doing
out.
reconnaissance.
Yeah. Like, that would be kind of cool to see. And, you know, you could also potentially test the waters for other things, and again, that's getting into the next topic. But, basically, I'm hoping for the best with this series, but there's not too much I can say other than DC, you better freaking make sure Fox doesn't screw this up. Because the last time you worked with Fox on something, that was the 66 Batman series, and while it wasn't
maybe
bad,
maybe they had a very strong word with Fox before they decided to go down this road.
Well, because, you know, people know 20th Century Fox was the one who originally did the 66 Batman series, you know, partnering with DC, and it's only recently that they've come to an agreement on, you know, being able to do anything with that property.
Right.
Which is why now you have comic books and toys coming out the wazoo now, thankfully, for that particular rendition of Batman. Hopefully they won't do anything near as campy or as goofy with this take.
I doubt they will.
Given the tone that's been working, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know, with darker storylines for Batman or people from the Batman universe, I think it's safe to say that they'll keep that tone.
Mm-hmm.
And that should play well given the current state of media on TV.
I think there's still room to remain hopeful, but cautiously hopeful.
Yes. So yes, I'm cautiously hopeful, and we'll see once more news is given to us.
Okay, good. That's just awesome.
Yes. Now, going on to our last story, like I said, you know, leading into it, speaking of, you know, comics on TV, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. premiered just this week on Tuesday, and
I liked it.
Yes, we saw it. If you haven't yet, the trailer... not the trailer.
I wasn't, like, jumping out of my seat or anything, but I was like, I'll watch you.
Yeah.
Alright. Okay.
And like I was saying, if you want, the first episode is up online. They actually re-aired it last night, Thursday, because the ratings were so high, it knocked everything else out of the water. It got that key demographic, adults 18 through 49, those people with disposable income, you know, who care about these characters or want to see something like this.
Who already are familiar with a character or two that might show up.
You know, they were number one for their time slot. They knocked out The Voice on NBC. They knocked out NCIS, you know, coming back from their break. And, yeah, they're looking to dominate, you know, this season in TV because, you know, coming off the Avengers. And very much, what I liked about this first episode, just briefly going over it, was the fact that even in this first episode, they tied back all the stuff you would have been exposed to if you've seen the movies. And let's not kid ourselves, most of the people watching this show already saw one of any of those movies.
Most likely, yeah.
You know, Iron Man, Hulk, the Avengers, any of those. And so when they throw out things like, oh, this thing that's on this guy's arm, it's got gamma radiation and super soldier formula and extremis. Like, these are words you would know from the movies, and for any fanboy, watching, they're like, continuity!
Yeah,
it's awesome!
But thankfully, even if you haven't seen any of said movies, all you had to know in the end after all of their technobabble was, oh, this thing is making him super, and it's doing a bad thing to him, and he's gonna explode.
Right.
Oh, okay, that's easy to follow. Alright, that's cool. And then you just go on with your life.
Yeah.
And go on enjoying the story. Like, okay, I will say that my one beef with it is just that, like, does the snark have to be non-stop? Like, all the time, constant, up until the one tense moment, and then it's back to the snark? Like, I think that was something that somebody brought up with me about GTA 5, was that they didn't find themselves able to connect to any of the characters in GTA 5. At the same time, why would you want to get that connected emotionally to anybody in GTA 5? But I get what you're saying.
Right.
In the case of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm having a hard time connecting to anybody but Coulson because I already have a relationship with Coulson. Let's just leave it at that.
And that's really where I think most people are getting in on this, is that, yeah, you've got all these characters that you've created for the show. You've got the hacker, the seasoned agent, the kung fu chick, and the two, lab rats. But you're there for Coulson.
Yeah.
Because let's not kid ourselves, it was fan response to just a few lines in Iron Man, a few more lines in Iron Man 2, a larger role in Thor, and a huge part of the Avengers that has brought this character to the forefront and made a show like this possible.
Like, he's a little snarky, but in a very dry sort of, oh, I'm serious when I say all of this sort of mannerism.
Yes.
He just seems so pleased all the time with himself, but very calmly to, like, how can you hate this guy?
And you can't.
But that's the problem, is that they then tried to make every single other character snarky, and they all just kind of come off sounding like douches to one another.
Right.
And I don't, again, it has not made me not want to watch the show.
Right.
Because it's not like the banter isn't well written or funny or what have you. It's just that I don't think I can take an entire series full of, really, you guys can't calm down for like 2 minutes?
Well, hopefully, these stories will go on, and they've said that they will bring in, their own villains of the week, and also some fodder for the comic book geeks out there who want to see, they haven't said for certain, but I'm guessing we'll see, like, AIM and Hydra, and maybe some other villains skewing about here and there. Now, the thing about it that I was thinking about and wondering about until really just a few days ago was that, as far as comic books on TV are concerned, really, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. only has had only two other bits of competition, and that's The Walking Dead and Arrow. Mm-hmm. Both, of course, based off comics. And really, they're so far apart, so very different, that you didn't have to worry about this pond here getting too full of, fish in it. Well, now, with the announcement of, like I just mentioned, Gotham over on Fox, and now just last night, DC also announced that there's going to be a Constantine series on NBC.
Oh, okay.
Like,
why?
That was out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And again, that's even weirder considering that Guillermo del Toro was talking about doing that Justice League Dark movie in which you would have Constantine and Deadman and the Shade and Zatanna and all these other characters in it, and now they're wanting to develop him for TV as well. So we've gone from having a very small pond with, only a few fish, and they had room to swim and grow. Now it seems that people are trying to jump on this bandwagon of, well, comics sell, let's start putting them on TV and put out everything. And on top of that, let's not forget that CW has Arrow, but they're also still working on the pilot for Amazon, which is the Wonder Woman project.
I don't know that I want to see that happen, though. I don't think I want to. No one can do it right. There's not precedent for it.
For Wonder Woman?
For Wonder Woman.
Well, admittedly, yeah, we and any number of people will tell you about this better than I can. Wonder Woman is long overdue for something done for her that brings her justice. And I think the closest we've actually gotten in recent years is, say, the cartoon Justice League or the animated Wonder Woman movie that they came out with a few years ago.
No, those are fine, but that's also because, you know, the animation studios are also working directly with source material and are just bringing comic pages to life because they're artists. Either way, they're taking art and turning it into another hand-drawn art. Whereas when you try and tell a story for television, like, these movies are being sold directly to the people who would have bought the comics to begin with. But when you create a property for television, you're selling to a completely different audience. Just like I was saying earlier, like, whatever puts butts in seats, whatever sells tickets, whatever sells advertising, however many viewers it gets, it doesn't matter whether they're comic fans or not. They're just like, oh my god, it's getting ratings, let's do this more.
Well,
whether or not it's good.
What I'm willing to argue here is something that's been said about Marvel, and I think we talked about this on an earlier show, which is that Marvel doesn't have a problem displaying who these characters are, whether or not they're gods or giant green men, or super soldiers, or a guy in a really expensive suit of armor. They don't have a problem showing that. Whereas on Arrow, up until current, they had to rationalize everything like, oh, this is a realistic guy with a bow and arrow, and he's not actually fighting supervillains. However, this season, they're bringing in the Flash, and they're not saying, oh, it's a realistic take on... No, we've said he's a red and yellow costume super speed guy. Which shows that,
I mean,
Marvel, they've spilled first blood here. They've made the first shot, and now everybody's having to respond to that.
Well, it's like, well, maybe now we're also living in a universe where perhaps we can retcon the idea that the Force is midi-chlorians, perhaps. It's that sort of mentality, like, why would you try and rationalize gods and suits that are powered by a thing that doesn't exist, for example? Like, why do you need to rationalize that? Obviously, you read these comics because you're like, oh, this can't possibly actually exist. I think I will just use that as my piece of escapism. Whereas Star Wars was like, oh, you thought the Force was something mystical and fantasy? Nope, it's science. And we're gonna explain away everything that made it precious and mystical and special and unique. There's nothing special or unique about it anymore.
Now, see,
oh, okay. Oh, well, so hopefully, like, though I'm thankful for the way Marvel has been treating it, because they make no apologies for the way they display superpowers.
Right, and that really is what's having to have everybody else respond, and because they're responding, it may not work as well for them. Like, say, Constantine over on NBC. Now, NBC in recent years has shown that they can't really handle any sort of superhero or superpower properties. You know, they tried it with the Cape, that died after a season, their Wonder Woman pilot never got off the ground, and the costume was horrible.
I still remember that footage you showed me that I had never seen up until that point.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Right? And then, of course, unfortunately, we all know what happened with Heroes.
You know, I liked Heroes for a while. Like, 2.5 seasons worth.
Right? And then...
it was so good up until then.
But the thing is, with Constantine, I think it's worth arguing that that kind of supernatural, you know, detective / con man / you know, paranormal sort of story, Supernatural's got the market cornered on that. So I don't know how much more Constantine can take from that when Supernatural already has this huge fan base. So they've already got a wall to climb there.
I would really rather not climb the Supernatural wall. That sounds like a very sticky wall to climb, and it probably smells really bad too.
That can be argued one way or the other. Point being, S.H.I.E.L.D., more or less, they're at the top of the heap right now with just one episode. Because they've managed to show they've got room to grow, they don't have a problem with displaying powers, and yeah, all these other shows are having to respond to it, all these other networks. Why would they announce these two other shows, Gotham and Constantine, the same week as Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D's premiere. They're scared.
Well, yeah, they have to pull out numbers, or else they're going to lose in ratings, and they're going to lose money, they're going to lose advertising revenue.
Right, exactly. And really this comes back to DC having to play catch-up when Marvel's already got their stuff together.
Your move, DC.
Yeah, your move again. You gotta prove yourself on this front too, not just with your movies, now you gotta prove it on television.
And not just in animation.
Right. So it's gonna be an interesting year or 2 years when these shows are actually all competing against each other, you know, for ratings and for all of these things and for mass appeal.
Alright, it's a good time to be alive.
What a time to be alive.
Just to see all this competition. Because if they're competing, in the end, we, as the viewers, are the winners.
Yeah. And then, yeah, the bottom line of this is, like you said, you know, people who don't know about these properties, don't know about Constantine, don't know about Green Arrow, don't know about S.H.I.E.L.D., don't know about Wonder Woman or any of these other guys, they're going to get in on it, and they're going to be introduced, and then they're going to want more of the media.
And then maybe can we finally look at a world where, you know, being a nerd is not something that you just want to make fun of people for on TV? I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No.
Oh, I was trying to be hopeful for a second.
Well, you can still be hopeful.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay. We're almost out of time anyway.
Okay, great.
Okay. So thank you again for listening to us, and it's been fun, and I don't know what you're trying to show me right now.
I'm not trying to show you anything.
They don't know that, but I do. I don't know while I'm looking at our episode listings.
Well, either way, if you guys have any comments or questions about stuff we brought up, whether it be, you know, our follow-up topics or any of what we've talked about, you can talk to us on Twitter. I'm at Josh Knight First.
I'm at Mars Girl Prod.
And until next week, thanks for listening in again to Beyond the Black Rims.
See you guys next week.